Mixtapes and Tasty Cakes podcast. I'm Bert Lepore. He's Samuel Monte Carlo. We're hanging here with Angry Mike D, and we talk about music, movies, and so much more.
Episode Mixtapes and Tasty Cakes, episode 28.
Yeah.
Wow, 28. Losing count of this stuff. I'm going to need like cue cards with the with the episode number. But today we're talking the Beatles discography, the studio records. We're going to rank all 13 of them, and we have a special guest with us, Beatles aficionado expert Dan Williams.
Dan the Man Williams.
What's up, Dan? Everybody.
Danny.
and big fan of the podcast.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
And we all know Dan. He's a photographer in the Philadelphia area, and if you're a band in the area, chances are he shot you. And he also shoots real estate properties and stuff, and all kinds of stuff. So.
Yeah, man. So. Dan, where could they get a hold of you at?
Well, you can get, my website is danwilliamsphotography.com. Pretty easy. And that's mostly for my real estate business. So if anybody knows any good realtors out there in the tri-state area that are looking to up their marketing game, I do a really good job with real estate photography. But my passion since growing up, since I was a little kid, was always to find access to shoot bands and performers, and I finally did that starting about 17 years ago.
Nice.
And you can go into Facebook. I think if you go to Dan Williams Music, folks will find both Bert and Damien in that Facebook page.
Yeah. Now, if you want the naughty pictures, you got to pay. So it's that we have an OnlyFans in case you need.
And my agent is Bert Lepore.
Do we have pictures from this first meeting, though, Dan? That's...
Only stories. Only stories. Only stories.
And Damien, I know I'm probably going to get this wrong because it's a weird side angle, but it looks like Paul McCartney's taking a nibble of your ear.
Is that Paul McCartney? Right.
Is that Paul or who is that?
It's John. I think John.
That's hilarious.
Okay. John, Paul, and Gene.
Paul's tonguing him in the back.
I thought that was Gene for a second. I'm like, what's Gene doing there?
Yeah,
it's just for show.
It's a photo.
I like it.
I thought it was hilarious. I'm going to turn it into a T-shirt.
There you go.
That's a great picture, Dame.
Yeah, it is. I like it.
All right, man. All right, guys. So we're gonna break it down. Number 13. We're gonna start with you, Damo. It's Yellow Submarine.
Yeah, this one. This is where Dan's going to come in. He's going to give you all the history and the background. But this one was a bit lopsided. I thought it was sort of like, to me, it seems like an EP, and side two is they just filled it up to make a record.
The George Martin experience.
Yeah. So side two is it's all like orchestral stuff from George Martin, and we could say the guy, George Martin, it was a genius right there, but not really. It
wasn't
not really. Yeah. It is, but it's like there's no singing. It's just instrumental stuff. But on the actual, the Beatles music part, you got Yellow Submarine is a good, sing along tune that Ringo sang, and All You Need Is Love.
It's some of the better songs that even
tune.
in that movie wasn't in that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's pretty much the soundtrack
but,
for the movie.
Yeah, we ranked this at 13. I think everybody had it at 13. Probably just for that reason. But yeah,
did I have it that low? I can't.
Not that low. You had a little higher, but it wound up being 13.
I have some nostalgia added to that. So
yeah. Well, that kicks in. That makes sense.
This was one of the later records. Came out in '69, and It's basically, it seems like a filler record to me. I don't know.
Yeah. What you got, Dan?
Well, it wasn't their fault. So they had a 3-movie contract. The first one was Hard Day's Night, which even Roger Ebert, remember Roger Ebert, the movie guy?
Yeah.
He ranks it as one of the best movies of all time.
Really?
Wow.
And it's a great music movie. And so they did Hard Day's Night in beautiful black and white. Then they did Help, and they filmed that down in the Bahamas, and that was just a yuck it up kind of fun thing in color. But then they were starting to get tired and bored with each other and everything else, and their publisher came back and said, "Hey, you owe us a 3rd movie." And they basically didn't want to do it, so they created a cartoon. And they were not involved in the production of the cartoon. They're not the voices. They're nothing. They showed up for about 3 minutes at the end of the movie. And so they were required to come up with just 4 new songs. That was it. The Capitol Records made them come out with 4 songs.
Their contract.
Yep. And those 4 songs were Only a Northern Song, All Together Now, It's All Too Much, and my very favorite song off that album, Hey Bulldog. And the rest, like Dame said, is instrumental on the back end, and that was from the cartoon.
Right.
And it was really good stuff, okay. But it was mood music. It was designed orchestral music for the movie.
Yeah.
So, but I also put it at 13 because it's like an EP, to your point, Dame.
Yeah.
By the way, side note, in 1999, they came out with a revised version of this album and took out the instrumental stuff and added in a bunch of other songs.
Nice.
There was a lot of songs in that movie.
Probably the song that Mike's talking about.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they did, Mike. They put in the songs that were in the cartoon.
That makes sense. Like an official soundtrack kind of deal.
Yeah.
Well, you know how they put up movie scores and one's got like songs on it and the other one's just orchestra? That's sort of, I guess, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll have 2 versions and stuff. Mike D, what do you got?
Yeah, man, I think I put this a little too high. I think I had this probably mid-pack, if I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And but this was like I was a kid, man, and this was like my entry point into the Beatles. I was very young. I remember we just got the VCR and we taped it off the TV, the Yellow Submarine, and I would watch that over and over again, like probably like at least once a week, once a month.
Right.
So that's what kind of got me into the Beatles right there. So I'll look at that as an entry point. So, but let's not all forget though, too, our friend Brian would have never been who he is if this wasn't there.
Right. He might have been called something else.
There would be no Blue Meanies.
Right.
So let's just say that this album did have some good things.
Here goes the Blue Meanie.
Check it out, baby.
Love them.
There's Jeremy.
Let me tell you, man,
awesome.
I was scared shitless of them things as a kid. Especially that tall guy with the jaw and he's stomping and
oh yeah.
So
or the guy with the finger dude.
Yeah, man, the pointer, I can't even do it. Like, but I mean, that was just a bizarre, trippy movie. And then later on, I kind of got bummed out when I heard that they didn't do the voices in that. I didn't know that growing up.
I didn't know
they just showed up and sang All Together Now at the end.
It's crazy.
Which wasn't even the best song.
Right.
They didn't even do the other songs.
Hey Bulldog was a Lennon song that was just off the charts and nobody even knew much about it until years later when it came out again.
Yeah.
And that's a great song.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it ranked low because it was half instrumental. That's the only reason. It had a couple familiar songs on it. It was just okay. The songs that were on there were good, but like I said, half instrumental. That's probably why we're putting it at 13. Okay. So moving on to number 12 with the Beatles. What do you have, Damo?
Well, one thing I like is the album cover because it's the first Kiss record is pretty much a direct ripoff.
Everybody rips off that record. Even the Danzig exclusive huge record. Everybody rips that record off.
Yeah. This is their second record released in 63, November 63. Their early stuff, I really do like a lot of the early stuff. It's just real stripped down, rock and roll pop, poppy, very
back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it was. I mean, it was very, very influenced. You could definitely hear, they say their influences were Elvis, Chuck Berry. You definitely hear it. I mean,
oh yeah.
And the one thing all these songs all these albums they're not stinkers. I mean, even if they're ranked 13, 12
Right,
or
there's
whatever.
not really a
I mean,
bad
they're still great, but I think
It just ain't
one
our
of the reasons.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things is because that, you know, half of this album are cover tunes.
Yeah. Oh,
You know, I mean, Roll Over Beethoven, you know, I thought it was a great version. But then you have, you know, All My Lovin', which is a classic. You know,
the thing that really separated the Beatles was the fucking harmonies. The harmonies. For me, that's what caught you. I'm not a big Chuck Berry jing 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 guy. It drives me nuts. But the harmonies, love the harmonies. You know, absolutely love the harmonies, man.
and they all sing. You know, all four guys sang. You know, and it was you know, one of the few bands where everybody was an individual. Everybody,
an important
you know,
piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was Ringo fans, there was Lennon guys, people who just like Paul. You know, it was, you know, everybody had their guy.
Yeah,
you know, which many bands. I mean, look at the Stones. I mean, I think it was always Mick and Keith. Really, I mean, the Who. You know, I think it was probably just the Who might be a little different. It was.
Well, yeah, Keith Moon, every little Keith.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying.
Usually have a staple. Aerosmith, you think of Joe Perry, you know, and Steven Tyler. The other guys are probably just as important or more, but they're the guys you think of. They're the guys that stand out. Usually it's the guitar player and the singer. That's usually what everybody kind of relates.
But like for groups at that time, you know, from like the 50s and 60s, it's always like the front man. But they had four singers. It was four front men, you know?
Yeah.
It was unique, very unique.
Made them diverse. What you got, Dan?
Yeah.
Well, this is an interesting album. This and the first one, Please Please Me, they're almost like a double album. And if you go through their career, there's a number of like what could be double albums.
Right.
Like Rubber Soul and Revolver, they could be a double album.
I could see that.
In this case, this was their second album, and they still had Training Wheels on it from EMI.
Right.
Now, remember, they had spent a long time in Hamburg and earlier just playing their hearts out. And when they were in Germany, in Hamburg, before they got discovered, really, they were playing like 8 shows a day and night in these bars.
Wow.
And the German fans, they wouldn't let them get off the stage. So they were taking uppers and downers to go to sleep. And they were just really working their asses off. And the thing is that in order to fill that time, can you imagine every day doing, say, 6 shows? And so they had to learn a catalog of other bands. So they were a cover band.
Right.
To start with.
Yeah.
Pub band.
Like everybody, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's a cover band when they start. Well, so were they. And so both Please Please Me and this one were, like to what Damien said, were very heavy on covers. There were 6 covers on this album and 8 originals. EMI did not want them to do very many originals because they didn't have the faith in them yet that they could that they could sell.
Right.
So their covers are once from the Music Man musical. And the reason why they did that was there were people in Germany that wanted to hear musicals.
Right.
So they learned Till There Was You, you know, and but there's
it doesn't say much though.
What's that?
I said that doesn't say much because they also have an affinity towards David Hasselhoff. So
the Germans love David Hasselhoff. Hey, Mike, don't fuck with the Hoff.
don't hassle the Hoff.
Don't hassle the Hoff. That's what it is.
But they still gave them a little longer time to record, about 3 months off and on between touring and all that. And the interesting thing for you guys that do recording is they only had a 2-track machine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so they had, and on their first few albums, I think first 2 albums, it was that. Then they became a 3-track or a 4-track. I mean,
4.
Yeah.
And then 8-track didn't happen until Abbey Road.
Right.
So Sgt. Pepper and everything else was only on 4 tracks. They had to
keep bouncing stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
They had to get real creative.
Yeah. And that's
so
what they
you
did
think
later,
about this. So when Bert talks about the harmonies, where you've got John, Paul, and Gene Simmons singing on a microphone, you know, that was in one take. They didn't have the luxury of being able to overdub too much.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
but you know what?
But it was
like you said, you know, playing 8 shows a day.
Chops,
I mean, they were
man.
probably tighter than anyone. You know, I mean, they're probably pitch perfect.
Well, if you look up the term, you probably know this, 10,000 hours. It was in a book, and the Beatles were mentioned that if you really want to learn a skill, you've got to spend $10,000 in the woodshed before you even introduce yourself to the world.
Yeah,
I can see that.
They did.
I can see that.
So,
Mike D, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, this old stuff just wasn't my thing. I mean, a couple songs off of it, but for the most part, it's like I'm not into that. Like old part of them.
Right.
A few songs here, a few songs there. It wasn't until the second half of
I got you.
stuff
Yeah,
that I really got into the
when
Beatles.
that's when I really get into it. Also, for
Like,
me,
it's weird because my mother was like she still is a huge Beatles fan. And I say to her, I was like, you know what? I was like, if they didn't change halfway in their career, I was like, they would have never been as big as they are now.
I agree with that.
And she kind of disagrees with me on that. But
we'll get to it. But they changed music. They changed the way it's recorded. They changed music.
Everything about it. Everything.
Yeah.
The way people looked. It was a cultural phenomenon. I mean, so many stories from everybody that was around at that time. Like when they saw Beatles and Ed Sullivan, the day before they had pompadours. The day after,
seen it? Yeah.
comb it down, right?
Yeah, dude, that shit back then was heavy. That was considered heavy back then.
Oh,
you know?
the hair, or the music.
Everything, the music, everything. It was
the hair was considered very long.
Right, and it wasn't even really that long.
Yeah.
You'd like to have hair like that, right, Bert?
I used to have that flowing hair.
If you look at my baby pictures, I had the Beatles cut like probably until I was like age 5 or 6.
Atta boy.
For me with this record, I mean, it's I ranked it at number 8 for me. 8 original songs, 6 covers. For me, the standout tracks, I'll be short and simple with it. All My Lovin' and Money were the 2 standout tracks on that record for me.
Money was good, man. All My Lovin' was a first was a number 1.
That's a great song. It
is a good song.
That's a great song. Okay, so we're going to move on to number 11, Beatles For Sale. What do you got, Damo?
This is what, third record?
Yeah.
Fourth record.
Fourth record.
Came out at the end of 64. Beatlemania is in full swing. Yeah, I mean, the standout tunes. I'm a loser. I like a lot. 8 days a week, obviously. And one thing I love is that all these songs are like hover around the 2-minute mark, which if you can't get it done in 2 minutes, man, forget about it. But
if you can't get it done in 2 minutes, you come see me. I can help you out.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the older records are pretty familiar, but it's the same formula pretty much. They're pretty close together. They put them out like 2 a year, and you can see on this one, it's the 4th record. There's less covers. They're starting to get away from that.
It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Is it the same?
6 covers and 8
3, 4, 5. Oh, you're right.
6 and 8.
Wow.
You're right. Yeah.
So it just shows that EMI was still not quite sure. Not only that, to what Damien said, they were just pushing these guys to tour and go back in the studio, tour and go back in the studio. And they had to pull from that Hamburg, that 10,000 hours of songs of covers in order just to fill the content.
Absolutely.
So they didn't have a choice. I mean, they were just, and then in between, there were these
45.
Yeah, nice.
So what they would do is they would take some of the best songs that they were going to put on the albums, and they'd release them as 45s, so the girls could be, kept in. So the stream would continue,
just to appease everyone's appetite. Yeah.
Sorry, Bert.
That's great. That's great, man. So Dan, what do you remember from this record?
I think I just said it, but
I don't want to come short.
It took 3 months to record, which was really rare, but they were always out on tour, and they were getting sick of it by this point.
Yeah,
and it was a 4-track album. It was their second 4-track album, which recording people will appreciate that, because now they don't have to bounce through, down to 2. And
was this when it was all in mono, Dan?
It was still on mono. Okay. It was still on mono, but Capitol, when they would send the tapes over to Capitol would fake the stereo.
Right.
So, and in Capitol, as you know, a lot of these albums, they're not from that, like this one here. You know, we're getting into the range of this one with this album.
Right.
And these are Capitol released totally different albums. What they did was they took these 13 song albums and stripped them down to about 8. And then that way they could put out more albums.
Yeah,
And,
Is that why if you go into the vinyl bin, because sometimes I go into some of the, these vinyl places I go to, and there's 13 Beatles albums, but there's a shitload of them. If you go through them, you're like, what the hell are all these Beatles records?
Well, here's the thing. When I was a kid, I didn't know that there were 13 Beatles albums, and I didn't know certain albums. When John Lennon, if you go back and watch some of the videos and John Lennon's talking to an American audience on stage, he'll say, this is our latest hit from, whatever album it's called.
Right.
And it's because it was called something different here.
Somewhere else. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so this one was a very good album. They were starting to learn the whole thing, but it still had 6 covers. They had Rock and Roll Music and Kansas City from Little Richard, and that's when Paul learned how to do his woo,
all that stuff.
But No Reply was fantastic. You got 8 Days a Week, which I got sick of hearing over and over.
It's a great song.
I really did. That was one of those that I really got sick of. But anyway, that came out on a single too.
Very nice.
But it was a good album, but they were still on training wheels.
For me, I had this at 10, and the star of the show for me on this record is No Reply. I think it's an excellent song. That's such a good song, man. But so Beatles for Sale ranks at 11. We're going to move on to number 10. Please Please Me, their debut record in 1963. What do you got, Damo?
Yeah, debut record. I Saw Her Stand There opens it up.
Yeah.
Love Me Do,
the best.
Twist and Shout. It's funny, like some of these covers, I'm more familiar with the Beatles versions than the original versions,
Me too.
I had no idea Twist and Shout was a cover tune until recently.
Oh,
I
really?
thought that was something that they
It was
wrote.
the Isley Brothers, right?
Yeah.
Was it? Really?
And
I
this
thought it
other
was like
one,
Chuck Berry or something.
Fats Domino.
the past couple days.
The Fats Domino?
No, I don't know. I'm making up shit.
This song Chains. I've heard that like a million times from a bunch of different people, and now I just found out. I had no idea Carole King was one of the writers on it.
Ain't that crazy? She's been around for a long time, dude.
I know. I had no idea. I thought she was like late 60s, early 70s. I had no idea she was writing.
By the time she came out with Tapestry, she had 1 billion songs, I think, written.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
she was a big writer.
That's what I got on that one.
Dude, it's like you got Carole King and another underrated songwriter. Well, underrated songwriter to the common people that don't know. Neil Diamond, Jesus. Another great songwriter. Crazy. Wrote so many
who else
songs.
was in that group was Paul Simon.
And Paul Simon, and Paul Simon.
In the Brill Building, yep.
Yep, and all them guys, even Bowie in the beginning, all them guys kind of started out as writers, then finally got their shot. So I think Bowie started out as a writer also. Crazy stuff. Yeah. Dan, what do you have for Please Please Me?
Well, Please Please Me. That was the beginning. Told you I was around back then.
Wow.
This was my transistor radio that when I was supposed to be sleeping, I had under my pillow listening to all those songs.
Oh, wow.
It's good shit.
Dan?
And that's how I
have a few
through this that I became a Beatles fan.
Does it still work?
No, but I'm going to get it. I'm going to send it in and get somebody to make it work.
You should.
I have a few of them in my
house. But it's a Sears Silvertone.
Nice. You said you got some of them, Mike?
I got about maybe 3-4 kind of different ones. Yeah, they have like ones with like leather cases and stuff like that.
Your mother probably had them, or your grandfather.
It might be from my grandfather. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, there were 6 kids in my family. I was supposed to be sleeping, but I was listening to All My Lovin' and P.S. I Love You and all that.
And that was really the beginning of Beatlemania off the bat, right? Pretty much.
I was 10 years old.
Wow.
Now think about when you were 10. What were you getting into? Never mind. I shouldn't ask Bert that.
That kind of stuff.
Damien, when you were 10, what were you listening to?
That's when I started getting 10 years old.
Music.
I started getting
music.
Yeah, Bon Jovi, stuff like that. Yeah.
That's when it starts.
So think about.
I took a different route.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? Left?
No. I was actually at that age. I was getting into the hip hop. Actually, a lot of the early hip hop.
Yeah.
Run DMC and stuff like that. Fat Boys, Houdini,
I love Run DMC,
stuff like that. So.
Mike D cut his teeth on the cardboard dancing, right? Were you dancing on the cardboard?
Nah, man, I was no break dancer. I'm not even a dancer. So
I'd love to see that one.
Oh,
I'm like Elaine Bennis.
So anyway, so this was the one that blew it open. Please Please Me, when they recorded that, George Martin told them that's a number one.
nice.
And what they were going for, do you remember the name Roy Orbison?
Yes,
Remember that?
absolutely. Yeah.
They originally, when they wrote this, John was trying to go for the please, please me, it's trying to sound like Roy Orbison. And it was George Martin that said, let's speed it up.
Nice.
And they came out with a number one hit. And so that was a great song. But, you look in there, I saw her, Dame, you brought up, I saw her stand. That's still the one McCartney always plays wherever he goes.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever he walks on stage with Billy Joel or somebody like that, they play I Saw Her Standing There.
So that's a long time.
It's a little it's a little creepy now because she was just 17.
Yeah. She was almost there.
but
Hey, it was a different time.
P.S. I Love You was huge.
Was it
Do you want to
really?
know a secret? Do you want to know a secret?
That's a great song. That's a great
And
song.
that was a George song. George sang that.
Really? So I didn't even know
So,
that.
yeah.
Wow.
And
I
he
didn't
sang
even-
Roll Over Beethoven too.
Mike D, what you have?
Yeah, man. I'm like, I'm
You're boring.
Like I'm very. I mean, I'm not going to shit on it because
We can't
let's
talk to
face
you
it,
until they start
it's-
tripping out.
Yeah,
Until they start tripping
he's
out.
waiting for the drugs.
Yeah.
yes. Hopefully, mine will kick in by then.
All right, so we're going to move. Well, I didn't really give my opinion, but you guys pretty much said it. I had this one at 11. It's the debut album, but I Saw You Standing There, Love Me Do. You know what song I love off this record? And some people hate it, and it's a cover song. And it reminds me of when I started getting into the Beatles, it was my stepbrother who used to play the Beatles all the time. And he used to have like a fruit stand. I used to work at the fruit stand with him. And
I remember that fruit stand.
remember the fruit stand on 10th Street?
I worked at a fruit stand.
There you go. See, we got something in common.
I used to hang out with Bert after school at that fruit stand like every day.
At the fruit
Go
stand.
figure this. Go. You started out selling cucumbers, and now.
Yeah.
And
It still
now,
felt like- but really, my stepbrother is a huge, till this day, is a huge Beatles fan. My cousin Danny was a Beatles fan, but my stepbrother, even my dad was too, but my stepbrother the most. Like he was still a Beatles nut. And he used to play this first record all the time. And the song that stuck out in my head because I thought it was eerie, A Taste of Honey. I love that song.
Oh yeah.
I love it. I don't know. A lot of people don't like it. I like that one.
that started out as an instrumental with Herb Alpert, I think.
Really? See, I didn't even know
trumpet
that.
player. And yeah, that was a good song.
I mean, it's
But
not
again,
well
that was a
noticed.
filler song. That was from their show in Germany and Liverpool and all that. Because they had to fill shit in there just to,
time.
because the demand was so high, they were playing hours and hours, so they had to come up with that kind of stuff.
Yep. Moving on to number 9, A Hard Day's Night. Damo, what you got?
Now, is this the did the movie come out first or the record come out first, Dan?
Together.
Together.
Together
Okay.
they did.
Yeah, I was just curious about that. If what came first. But yeah, I mean, you got Can't Buy Me Love, Hard Day's Night on this. If I Fell, I like that tune.
That's a good one.
Anytime at All was a cool tune. This is the third album. And you know what? They're all original tunes on here.
It's the first one written without any
Yeah.
outside people, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What do you got on this one, Dan?
Well, the movie slayed me right from the start. They when they were young, the big movie for music was called The Girl Can't Help It. And if you've never seen it, have any of you guys seen that?
No,
I never heard of it.
That was a 50s movie that had like Little Richard, I think, and a lot of other current performers of that day. I think it had Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, wow.
And but I will tell you that it was maybe not, but it was called The Girl Can't Help It. And it was basically the first big rock and roll music movie. And so the whole thing with Hard Day's Night was they wanted to capture that while these guys were hot. And the reason why they needed to do that at that time was they weren't sure if they were going to stay hot.
Mhm.
You know how it is, right?
Yeah.
So so they wanted to throw them in front of the TV, or in front of the movie screen to get all these girls to come and watch their movie. They did it in black and white, budget reasons. but it turned out it's great in black and white. And it's actually, even though it's fictional, it's a really good movie to see their personalities. They had those Liverpudlian personalities.
Yeah.
And they show really well. And George's little side note, Patty Boyd was in it. So if you know anything about Beatles history, Patty Boyd turned out to be probably the one woman in this world that the best songs were written for. Right, Dave? So
clap.
You know, when you hear George Harrison's best love songs, it's her. But when you hear Eric Clapton sing Layla, and you hear him sing Blue Jean, whatever the song is, I forgot the name of it, something about blue jeans, and the Beautiful Tonight or Wonderful Tonight, those are all about Patty Boyd.
That's crazy.
Because George and Eric had a weird relationship where George married Patty, and then Eric took her away and married Patty.
But they were still friends.
And they're still friends.
Yeah.
They were still friends.
Dan,
it was like, okay.
I got a question for you, though. Did they put the keys in the bowl? That's what I want to know. Did they put the keys in
both
the bowl?
Both of them. Okay. Yes, both of them. So anyway, so the album Hard Day's Night was from the movie. A lot of originals in there. And man, just some great songs. You know, you got I Should Have Known Better. You got you know, And I Love Her, which is one of the most beautiful love songs.
Yeah, it's great too.
You've got If I Fell. You've got even Can't Buy Me Love.
Great song.
I mean, those are all big songs.
Yeah,
so
it's fun.
It's a good album.
Yeah. I definitely agree. Mike D, got anything on this one?
Yeah, out of their older ones, this is probably my favorite.
It's the most memorable for me out of the old ones too.
Yeah, before they, you know, hit that little change.
Oh, that change is big, and that change is coming now. Number 8, Rubber Soul. Damo, what you got?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but is this like, you think this is like the first, kind of like the start of the changing, maybe?
I think so.
To like this.
Well, I mentioned
act,
that you can almost create double albums with their stuff.
Yeah.
So this was when they were just damn sick of touring, and they were tired of being told what they can do.
Yeah,
and so this and Revolver, that was Mike D's major transition period.
Yeah,
right.
This album and Revolver.
Yeah, not my favorite, but yeah, it's definitely, you know, a little something different.
Yeah, it seemed that way to me. Like I look at their career in like, in like two halves. Like this is like the first half of their career. This is like towards the end. You could start to kind of,
or it's the beginning of the second half.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's like the transition, but
it's when they started to, I think, dabble in experimental stuff, I should say.
Yeah.
Even with the instruments. Is this the first record that George plays a sitar on? I'm not sure if
it might be like Norwegian Wood.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought it was the one.
Now they had already met Dylan by this point.
Yeah.
Dylan was the one that taught them a little bit about weed.
Yeah.
And so now they met him the year earlier. And so now this comes out. And they've got they're all originals. They're basically telling EMI, thanks for all your help.
Yeah, fuck off.
Here we go.
We're doing it our way now.
Yeah. Dan, I read I can't remember the guy's name offhand. I wish I would have looked it up. I read a book that my buddy Don, who's another Beatle nut, let me, and it was the guy who engineered the stuff. And the book was
Jeff Emmerich.
There you go.
The best book ever. Right?
There you go. Great book.
Isn't it the best book ever?
It's great. It's great. It's awesome. Yeah. What was it called? Do you remember offhand?
No.
We have to look it up. We'll look it up and put it.
You know what? He spells his first name Geoff. So
because it talks
Emmerich,
about
he was their engineer.
They would call say like we're in the studio and we're like, move the mic here, move the mic there. You couldn't move nothing, right? You had to have what do they call the white lab
guys
coat
with
guys.
The white coats.
Yeah, the white coats.
The engineers.
You couldn't move a bass drum fucking thing unless they came in and moved it for you.
That's right.
Like Union or something. Crazy. Yeah. That book is excellent.
Until now. This album.
And then this was the change. This was, they were like, yeah, screw you. We're going to do whatever we want kind of deal. We're
It's
the
like,
Beatles.
we're the fucking Beatles. Come on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, they didn't have any time constraints on their recording sessions, and they can do
More
whatever
freedom.
they want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now for you, Dan, listening to this record, because you followed them since you were a kid, listening to this record, was it like, that's weird, or was it like, what the fuck at that point?
It was a what the fuck moment.
Yeah.
It was because you know what? There was still enough of the old Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was Revolver was the mind blower. In fact, I talked to Dame the other day. I originally had Revolver as number one.
Right. It's tough.
But
It gets tough.
Revolver is a major album. But this was the lead into that.
Right. How old were you at this point?
This was what, 1965?
5, yeah. The end of 60.
Yeah, 5.
The end of 65.
Okay, so I was
December.
11 or 12. I was 12.
You were prime, so you were prime at that point. Yeah.
This was killing me.
Yeah.
But the thing is that in my back then though, we bought singles, we bought 45s.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of like today with music downloads, people buy one song.
Single, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that way at the time where people bought.
It's going back to that now.
Yeah. So they bought singles, but it was two-sided.
Yeah. Usually the throwaway track or the B-side was something they didn't think was going to be.
Well, the B-side was, but we're going to get into where it wasn't. But here's the standouts on that. Norwegian Wood and you'll love this part. Norwegian Wood was a Lennon song, and he was actually bitching about some girl that he was that he had a one night stand with.
Right.
And the song, this is a wild one. So and you have to know the inside story to understand it. Then it's like, holy shit, this happened back then. So the song is about a one night stand. She says, you know, you can sleep in the bathtub if you want. You know, you can hang out for the night and all that. And it had the sitar, like you said, George Harrison's sitar. But then he talked about I Lit a Fire, Norwegian Wood, isn't it good? At the end, he burns down her apartment because it was sided by Norwegian Wood.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
That Norwegian Wood was, you know, like here they use Luan for old fashioned siding. Or that stuff in the basement. But back then it was Norwegian Wood in England.
That's crazy.
I Lit a Fire, isn't it good? Norwegian Wood.
I would have filed that onto the foreign porn section.
So that to me, now, you know, if you think about where they were going, Michelle was a huge hit.
Yeah.
That's my favorite song on that record.
That is a great song.
Girl is porn.
Really?
Yeah, if you listen to Girl, it's a John song. John was all about pushing the edge.
Yeah.
So if you listen to Girl, he goes, girl, and he goes, and I've asked a lot of women if that excited them, and they said, you have no idea.
I didn't know that's all it took.
Are you going to start doing that to your songs now, Barry?
I'm doing it right now. You just can't.
That's right. and then carrying on with Lennon and his abusive personality, he did Run for Your Life. So Run for Your Life, if you can, little girl. Basically, if I catch you looking at another man, that's the end of the girl.
Crazy, right? Crazy.
So he's going to kill her, you know?
Crazy.
And then you got In My Life, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah, great song. Definitely a great song. Mike D, any words on Rubber Soul?
No, but you know what? I just never knew it had that darker side, like Dan's talking about.
All of a sudden, Mike's in.
Mike's in. Norwegian Wood.
No, I'm just like, wow. Like, you don't think that stuff, like, it just goes over your head.
Because you're a kid, you listen to it innocently. You're not really paying it. You're paying attention to the melody, and
Yeah, you're not really thinking about the lyrics.
Yeah.
They were always like, they had these little inside jokes because, as I mentioned, they had the guys in the white coats that were trying to control them.
Mm-hmm.
So when that happens, all of a sudden you think, okay, 4 of us, let's get together and figure out how we can get around
Start
that.
scheming.
Have a little fun. So there's other songs where they put a little some dirty words in it that you don't even realize are in there.
All right, we're gonna go back a little, like right before this record. Actually, we're gonna go to Help, 1965, coming in number 7. What do you got, Damo?
This is one of my favorite ones. It's the first one that I ever got. My uncle made a copy of it for me on cassette when I was maybe 10 or 11, I think. Actually, you know what? Probably even younger than that. But I mean, the entire first side, I think, is just like perfect. All those tunes I love. The Night Before, I love. You Gotta Hide Your Love Away is just a great song. Ticket to
That is an
Ride.
awesome song.
The version of Ticket to Ride I actually like better is there was a band came out a couple years after them. This is one of my favorite bands of all time called Vanilla Fudge.
Yeah.
And they were famous for basically doing covers
and slowing them down a lot.
Yes.
Slow,
so they did a version of this, Ticket to Ride, and it was like it was like kind of heavier, psychedelic. They're Carmine Appice is like my favorite drummer, and he was in that band. It was his first band. But
well, they did what's the name too?
You Keep Me Hanging On.
You Keep Me Hanging On. You listen to that version, and you're like, it's almost confused. Like, wait, was it? I don't remember being that slow.
It
was like sludgy.
Right. That was like they made it like a hit. But
we just had that on the other day, I think. Didn't we?
I did have it on the other day. I did play it.
Yeah,
I did play it. That's a great record. The Vanilla Fudge record, that one's great.
Yeah, I mean, Yesterday is on this record. I had this ranked. This is like my third favorite. But also because it takes me back to a place.
Absolutely, it all
when I was a
nostalgia.
Kid,
Nostalgia plays a big part in anything with music because it's a timestamp. We probably say this in every episode. I know I probably repeat myself 1,000 times, but it's a timestamp. If I say, "Oh, I remember this," and I'm like, "Ah, wasn't that great?" Might have not been that great as of now, but when you were, that it's like a soundtrack to your life kind of deal. You know what I mean? And there's certain points that it brings back a memory. It brings back. Like when you were into something at that age, like Dan said, 11 to like 20 or whatever it was, man, I bought everything, nothing. Now it's like, I care, but I don't care as much. I'm like, because you're grown up a little bit, so you don't, it's the timestamp. It's not as personal as it was back then. Cause it's your memories from a kid, so it all goes back to nostalgia, whether it's sports or, if you go, like wrestling, some of us are wrestling fans, and you'll hear the old guys go, Bruno, man, when Bruno was back in it, because that was their timestamp. The 80s were Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. Then the 90s, Steve Austin. It's just, it goes from, you can't.
It's what you grew up on.
It's what you grew up on. It's what you're familiar with. It's what you're familiar with. Yeah. Dan, what do you got for help?
3 things. Number one, Dave mentioned Yesterday. The cool thing about Yesterday was, everybody knows the story that came to McCartney in the middle of the night in a dream. Right. But and I don't know if it's still true. I think it is. It's according to the Guinness Book of World Records, it's the most covered song in history.
Wow.
That's a big deal.
Oh yeah.
And by the way, I sang it as a solo in 9th grade choir.
Oh, do we have a copy of that? Do we have a copy of that, Dan? I would love it.
Well, actually, it was because of that my dad bought me this album. It was my first Beatles album that I ever owned.
Very nice.
And it has Yesterday on it.
Dan, I just looked it up, and you're right about that. It is the most recorded song. 1,600 cover versions exist. That's
crazy.
We should.
And I can tell you, it's a hard ass song to sing. It's a tough one to sing.
I'm sure. McCartney's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's got a beautiful voice.
It's 2 minutes and 5 seconds long. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And it's just him. There's the other 3 Beatles aren't even on it.
Yeah.
So it's just him. So they went back to putting a couple covers on this album. So you had Act Naturally, which was in fact, I think Van Morrison actually has a credit on that one.
Wow.
With Johnny Russell.
Vonnie Morrison,
I guess that's the other one is Dizzy Miss Lizzy, which is a Lennon rocker.
Oh, that was a cover? I didn't know that was a cover.
Yeah. But it was they got a little more time in this one. They got 4 months to record this album. Off and on because they had little tour gigs and all that stuff. Here's the kicker. Their manager was Brian Epstein. He's the guy that discovered them. And if you don't know the story very quickly, he was the younger member of a family they had appliance stores, and the appliance stores back then also might have record departments.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in charge of the record department of his family's business called NEMS, Nems. And it was in Liverpool. And they had recorded something back in their Hamburg days with a guy they sang, just an old song from the 30s or something. And Ain't She Sweet? Remember that song?
Yeah.
Okay, Ain't She Sweet? So anyway, that had been recorded with this guy, and people started coming into NEMS asking Brian Epstein if he had that song. And, he didn't know anything about it.
Right.
So they said, the guys are playing down at the Cavern. You should go check them out. So he goes down there, and that's when he discovered the Beatles and set them on their trajectory. The story is that Brian was gay, and that was not looked upon. That could get you arrested back in England at that time.
Right.
And so he had to he had to keep that from the public eye, that and if it's true, we don't even know if it's true, but seems to be the story. So the song "You've Got to Hide Your Love Away," just recently, people are theorizing that's Lennon's ode to Brian Epstein.
Wow.
I could see
about
that. Yeah.
And it's a great song.
It is.
It is.
Here I stand, head in hand, turn my face to the, but it's a very interesting little side note to this album. And the movie's a lot of fun.
I had to go back and watch it. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
It's not as good as Hard Day's Night, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Mike D.
Yeah, man. I can't really add any more to this, but I will say it's funny because my grandmother was British. She came from England during World War II, and she had a job at Gimbel's at this time, like when the Beatles first came out, like around then, and she found them by accident. I think she was in the record department, and so I was like from England or something like that on there, and I think it was Meet the Beatles or maybe something else. It might have been an import or something like that. And I remember she brought it home, and it was like a few weeks later was when they were on Ed Sullivan. So she actually had it like a little before they were even big here.
Before they popped, yeah.
So just a little tidbit.
And the record's it's a good record. I like to go back and watch the movie though. I want to watch Hard Day's Night. You said Hard Day's Night was real good, right? So I got to go back and watch that.
Hard Day's Night. If you really want to know what the early days of Beatlemania was like, that's it.
So it's totally like taking on that storyline.
It's fictional, but it's real, and there's silly little side stories, but the bottom line is it's in beautiful black and white, which younger folks don't necessarily like black and white. I see a lot of colorization happening on pictures and stuff that I really cringe at.
No, I don't like the colorization.
I like true, beautiful, creamy black and white.
It usually looks bad anyway.
It does. And but this movie is in black and white, but the later versions of it, the sound quality are just amazing. And when you see them, singing and playing, it's like you're in the room with them.
I got to check it out. Now, the one thing I did like about the Beatles, and it probably plays into this time even when Help and the movies, I like that they always poked fun. They always had like a little comedic thing going on too. It wasn't just we're a band, They had like you said, John was probably the prick of the band. He would break balls, you know what I mean? They were like they were kind of like silly. Like they had, like you said, they had that brother connection where like they broke each other's balls and they were, they had some comic to them, So that makes them likable.
Right. You got it exactly right. They were brothers.
Yep.
And they just had a blast.
It makes them likable. It really does. You could see it. You could definitely see it.
And the humor from Liverpool was really unique.
Dark, right? Like dark humor, right? Like deadpan kind of.
And smartass. A lot of smartass stuff. You would have loved them, Bert.
What they always say how everybody makes, the Rolling Stones, like the Beatles were way tougher, came from a way tougher spot than the Rolling Stones did. They were like the Rolling Stones were like suburb kids,
Well, they were. These guys, actually the closest to them was McCartney because he grew up in kind of a normal family and everything was kind of cool and sweet.
Right.
But the other guys, especially Ringo, he grew up in they called it the Dingle, the part of Liverpool that he grew up in called the Dingle. So he came out of there in a bad neighborhood, been sick all his life, missed a lot of school, and he was a badass. But the funny thing is, the girls liked him because he was a really good dancer.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Of course, Pete Best was definitely better looking than he was, so I don't know.
Well, Pete Best was better looking, but
what did happen with that, Dan? Do you know the story why Did Pete Best quit, or did he get thrown out, or
No.
what was the deal?
No, the guys didn't like him. Lennon actually has, here's the thing. They were going to Hamburg. They needed a drummer. They didn't have one. So they needed a drummer. Pete Best's mother owned she turned her house into a little like club where people could come and drink coffee or tea or something like that. And bands would come and play in their basement. And it was a big deal. Her name, what was her name? I can't think of what her first name was, but anyway,
Mrs. Best.
What's that?
Mrs.
Best.
Mrs. Best. So her son Pete was kind of an okay drummer, nothing much, but he had a drum kit and he was good looking. He didn't even look like the guys. He didn't comb his hair the same way. He didn't do anything like
totally
the guys.
Yeah.
And so, but they needed a guy in order to get the gigs in Hamburg, Germany. They needed a drummer. So they asked this guy to go along with them. They didn't really know him. And so they go down to Hamburg and they do their 10,000 hours of, working like crazy. And they come back up and all of a sudden Brian Epstein discovers them, takes them all over to all the different record companies who turned them down, by the way.
Right.
And then finally EMI with George Martin say, we'll give them a shot. And George Martin listens to the four guys and says, well, actually, he wanted McCartney to be the lead singer. He said the other guys are okay, but McCartney's the right guy.
Right.
But they said, no, we all sing. But he says, but the drummer has to go.
Wow.
And they had worked in Hamburg and all over Liverpool. Ringo was with a group called Rory Storm and the Hurricanes.
Yes.
And they played on the same bill, right?
They all the time.
Yeah.
And it was like dealing with Cyanide Saints, Hammer Down, and Mach 22.
That's
totally, and Throw Heaven's Edge in.
Yeah.
All interchangeable. all guys that hung out together.
Yep.
And they said, maybe Ringo will come and join us because he's the guy we like the best.
That's crazy.
And so George Martin told Pete Best, you're out, brought Ringo in, and that was it.
You think he would have ended up in another band like the Turtles or the Hollies or something?
Right.
It's like, yeah,
that guy could,
They said he just wasn't that good.
Oh. Now, Dan, I got one for you. And I don't think they were the Beatles yet. And they went under a couple different names. The guy that even, I think, named the Beatles, there was two guys, because I think the Beatles were, originally a 5-piece. One guy left and wanted to go to school, then he passed away. Yeah, that guy. And then there was another guy, which I think actually named the Beatles like the Silver Beatles or something like that, and they changed the name. There was one other guy. I just don't remember.
Yeah,
I think
they're calling something. There were a few. They're buddies from back in John Lennon's day.
John was like another bass player or something.
Yeah.
Stu Sutcliffe was an art school friend of Lennon's, and he was the best looking guy of all of them. And but he wasn't a musician. And they forced him into being the bass player. He didn't want to be, didn't know how to play bass.
And what was Paul playing guitar? I guess.
Yeah, they were all playing the guitar.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And the thing about McCartney is that he was a multi-instrumentalist already. So he knew how to play guitar. He didn't play bass yet, but he knew how to play everything else.
Yeah.
Well, there was that movie Backbeat.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah. And if you want to see something cool, it's like, I think it's called Lonely Boy or something. There's something about Lennon, but yeah, McCartney though did not want to play bass necessarily because it's kind of like, baseball. Everybody wants to be the pitcher, right?
Right.
Well, what a great bass player.
So in this case, it's like Stu Sutcliffe didn't know how to play bass.
Yeah.
He was embarrassed to be on stage. He met a really nice gal who was a photographer in Germany. Astrid Kirchner.
Yeah.
And she took all those great black and white pictures of the Beatles back in the day. One of my heroes, as a music photographer, one of my heroes. She just died last year.
Oh.
And she and Stu Sutcliffe became lovers. And Stu left the band. So now they needed a bass player. So McCartney bought the Hofner in Germany and taught himself how to play bass. Little side note, by the way, Lennon was never a guitar player. He started out, his mother taught him to play banjo.
Really?
So McCartney had to teach him, banjo chords are different than guitar chords.
Yeah.
So McCartney had to teach him how to play the guitar.
That's crazy. Yeah, I wonder how many people actually know the whole story. Like that's great,
Yeah.
man.
It's a pretty cool thing. His mother was a whack job, but she was cool.
I love it.